After much delay, the final flight, piloted by Delta Airlines, left Chicago midway at 3:45 Central Time, touching down in Seattle at 6:15 Pacific. Private charters have been given military clearance to use intercontinental airspace at their own risk. And now the traffic report. Amy?
We're fucked, Bob.
Thank you, Amy.
This fictitious news exchange comes from the film Seeking a Friend for the End of the World, where an asteroid is set to hit the Earth in exactly 3 weeks and obliterate the planet. In this particular context, the "we're fucked" exclamation is trivial, a first world problems exaggeration aimed to inspire laughter. However, when looked at through the light of our real-world environmental crisis, the sentiment merits further scrutiny. Are we really fucked? But also, who is we? In this video essay, I aim to draw together various texts read for my class, Environmental Justice in the Anthropocene, in an attempt to answer these questions, and I will use the film as a testing ground for these authors' theories and claims. Although the scenario presented in the movie differs in significant ways from the reality of climate change, I believe it still serves as a useful and enlightening point of comparison. To give a quick rundown for those who haven't seen the film, spoiler alert, the movie follows main character Dodge, played by Steve Carell, whose wife leaves him the day the Earth is diagnosed with an incurable asteroid and given 3 weeks to live. This personal loss, more than the impending global catastrophe, leaves Dodge hollow and without a will to go on. Then his neighbor, Penny, played by Keira Knightley, appears crying on his fire escape one night. After this fateful meeting, Penny passes on some of Dodge's mail that's been mistakenly put into her box, and Dodge discovers a months-old letter from his high school sweetheart. They are soon forced out of the city by violent riots. Initially, they are stuck together by a mutual promise that Penny helps Dodge find his old girlfriend, and Dodge helps Penny fly home to her family. But, as one might imagine, the more time they spend together, the more they bond, and the closer they get to each other and to the end of days, the further they deviate from their initial goals. This movie, I think, is a great representation of both the emotional progression that individuals go through, as well as the social shifts that occur in the face of impending disaster, and, for this reason, it is an ideal example through which to examine these questions of the Anthropocene and our tenuous existence within it. Before we can understand the extent to which we may or may not be doomed, however, we first have to operationally define the we.
No, honey, you're not fine. You're gonna die alone. Doesn't that bother you, Todd?
He's not gonna die alone.
Yes, he is.
He's not gonna die alone. He's gonna die with everybody else.
The increasingly circulated term Anthropocene, used to define the age of humans, carries with it the falsely universal assumptions that A, we are all equally responsible for the environmental crisis, and B, we will all suffer equally as a result of the crisis. Obviously, in the film, the asteroid cannot be blamed on human action. However, there are some moments that show that, even with such an equalizing catastrophe, differential vulnerabilities cannot be ignored, such as this scene where the main character, Dodge, implores his cleaning lady to leave.
Hola, señor Dodge.
Elsa, what are you doing here?
It is Thursday.
Are you shitting me, Elsa? Seriously, go home. Just be with your family or do anything else. I'm serious. You leave, please.
He cannot believe that, in the face of literal apocalypse, anyone would just go about their tasks like nothing was amiss, and it is supposed to be tragically funny that Elsa has no idea of their impending doom. This is problematic, and shows the problematic nature of the Anthropocene, because it assumes that only certain people truly understand the environmental crisis, and yet, as Laura Polito writes in Racism in the Anthropocene, those who don't understand, i.e. poor people of color, are those projected to be affected the soonest and the worst by extreme climate events. Additionally, it calls into question who has the luxury to just freak out in a situation like this. In his book Storming the Wall, Todd Miller brings up the idea of elite panic, which is the privilege of privileged people to take protective measures, such as building militarized bunkers, or investing in technology in the hopes of uploading our consciousness to the cloud or escaping to Mars. These kinds of measures are meant to perpetuate and maintain an us-them separation. As such, there can be no equal, universal consequence of climate change when differential vulnerabilities have been twisted into differential survivorships. Rebecca Solnit sums it up well in her book, A Paradise Built in Hell, when she writes that the old order was unjust means that disasters do not equally affect all members. As long as there are haves and have-nots, there is neither a universal consequence of, nor a universal responsibility for climate change.
Oh. Now I feel bad. Look, guilt isn't a feeling that I'm comfortable with.
Well, fortunately, you won't have long to live with it.
However, despite their indelible effects on modern life, The systems that have created these fissures and inequalities, i.e., capitalism and colonialism, are not the be-all and end-all in terms of how humans interact with one another and the planet. Different, more unified we's are possible. Take this scene at Frenzies, for example.
Hi, welcome to Frenzies, where everyone's your friend.
Where so many have closed their doors, given in to an every-person-for-themselves survival instinct, others recognize the need for community, especially in these difficult times.
Pre-order.
I believe you guys are still open.
Yeah, we thought about closing up shop, but then we realized this is really our family, you know? In fact, the tragedy has brought us closer. Some of us too close. That's impossible.
The top-down structures that give small subsets of people exceeding amounts of power over everyone else are being eroded. The individual beneficiaries will likely hold on for dear life, like this cop who takes his job way too seriously. However, we have to face the fact that the wave of change has already come. People are organizing at the grassroots level, building solidarity across pre-existing divides, undermining the foundation of tyrannical economic and political structures. For example, Idle No More and the Indigenous Environmental Network are protest groups aiming to decolonize resource extraction and restore native sovereignty. In addition to these, there are many anti-capitalist movements, some based in socialism, like the climate politics outlined by Matt Huber, others arranged around commons, resource sharing, and collective self-governance. The cooperative arrangements exemplified by the Frenzies restaurant scene are represented somewhat grotesquely, which, by extension, shows society's negative perceptions of communal anything.
I think that this place is some sort of cult and we probably shouldn't eat it.
Oh, you're crazy.
However alien this situation may seem, though, it still has its merits and is an especially valuable model for the change that is required by humanity.
This is amazing. Look, people are sitting down together. Everybody's happy. Hey, there is a conga line. It's just like, this is a piece of American history. It's a human landmark. It's a shout out to the man upstairs to say, oh, I smell weed.
Ultimately, at their heart, all these different movements are united by their goal of nurturing relationships, both between humans and with the earth. This kind of shift will not happen overnight, because, people like this guy exist and are obstinate as heck.
No.
But every step towards a new definition of us and a more collective vision of humanity is a step in the right direction.
Well, might as well get comfortable. It's as good a place to die as any.
This brings us back to the big question. Are we fucked? We are certainly doomed to disaster if we don't bridge the divides and redefine a broader, more inclusive we. Othering, that is, stripping another group of their humanity and making them somehow alien, enables sacrifice and disregard for the welfare and survival of others. Solidarity, on the other hand, unites people across difference and makes them an extension of us. This bridging is key to surviving and thriving in the face of calamity, and frankly, there's a lot of it projected to come our way. But we are now beginning to understand that it isn't destiny or some inevitable, inescapable part of being human that has caused this. The big we may be faultless, but there are smaller we's that are not. Corporations, CEOs, hedge fund managers, denialists. Unfortunately, the list goes on. Despite our anger and grief at the damage that these corrupt systems and people have wrought, we have to make amends to unite and move forward.
I really am sorry.
It doesn't matter anymore. We're in the same place now.
We truly are all in the same place now. Forgiveness is hard, but it is necessary if we want to be able to change and break these violent and painful cycles, to unite across difference, to re-universalize the Anthropocene. We may need to bridge connections between people, but our bridges to the past have to be burned. We can only all be in the same place if we cut our ties to our old ways, particularly the more destructive and unsustainable ones, and agree to step forward together into uncertainty. In the film, Penny is the first one to realize the value of the unknown on a visceral, emotional level. However, she knows she can't break Dodge's attachment to the past, and shouldn't try to. But Dodge soon recognizes that going back to his past love is impossible, and accepting that he has nothing to lose at this point, he is then fully ready to embrace the uncertainty of the future. Royce Scranton might call this learning to die. Leanne Simpson and others might call it dancing the world into being. This is not a naive decision. Obviously, in Dodge and Penny's situation, there is nothing they or anybody else can do to prevent the world ending. But the fact that they keep on living their lives anyway, mending old wounds and forging new relationships, is a testament of our ability to get through climate change. Each of us has to come to terms with the impending loss, both our personal losses and our global shared losses, so that we can take that step into the unknown. According to Rebecca Solnit, uncertainty is what allows us to have hope. The future is unwritten, and we hold the power to make it our own.
I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wish I'd met you a long time ago. I wi when we were kids.
Couldn't have happened any other way. It had to happen now.
But it isn't enough time.
Never would have been.
Letting go of the past also means letting go of whatever frustration we feel at the failures that preceded us. It's only not enough time if we believe that action was someone else's responsibility. But there can't be a someone else if there is only one we. It is our time and our chance to do something. Preventing the end of the world is a little out of reach, but that doesn't mean that there aren't possibilities. And hey, maybe the end of the world is exactly the push we need to do right by ourselves and others.
It only took Armageddon to give her the courage.
We can't prevent certain things falling apart, but we can take the broken pieces and reconstruct them into something new. Stephanie Wakefield would call this the back loop, a time of ultimate possibility when old ways crumble and true innovation and creativity are possible.
This bun is a donut. That's exactly what you think a burger with a donut bun would taste like.
We can do this. Now is our time.
May I propose a toast? Please. To the beginning of the world.